Okay, guys, we are going to be doing an aggregate supply and demand review. We're going to start with the graph. Sorry if it's a little shaky. I'm using my phone and, I'm not that tech savvy. Let's start with the graph. So we start by drawing it out. Remember that price level is on the y-axis. Real GDP is on the x-axis. We have the long run aggregate supply. Remember that this curve, and yes, I know it's a straight line, it's a curve though, is the same as the PPC curve. So that means it has the same shifters, which are change in trade, change in technology, and change in quantity quality of resources. When our equilibrium is on the LRAS, it means that we're at full employment. That means that we have 4 to 6% unemployment. So that's where we want to be. So we'll go ahead and start off with that graph. We have the short run aggregate supply curve. It's upward sloping. Remember the shifters are IRAP, inflationary expectation, changes in resource prices, changes in actions of the government, and changes in productivity. And then we have the aggregate demand curve. The shifters for the aggregate demand are SIGEX, remember? Consumer spending, government spending, investment spending, and net exports. So we have equilibrium on this case landing right under our natural rate of unemployment. Remember to label all of your points, QY, QFE, Q star, whichever one you like best. And then you label all your other points. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 points to label on the graph. Okay. Then we have, a recessionary gap. When we're in a recessionary gap, remember that it means that our economy is not where it should be. We are not at full employment. We are what is called inefficient. So label the same graph again. Long run aggregate supply. Aggregate supply to the sky, 1. Aggregate demand to the land, 2. We have E1. Again, our equilibrium will be to the left of the LRAS. Q1, QY, PL1. So our equilibrium is to the left of the LRAS. Our natural rate of unemployment is going to be higher than 6% unemployment, higher than our natural rate of unemployment. We are inefficient. Our economy could easily do a lot better than what it's doing, but we're in a recession basically. High unemployment, low output. Then we have an inflationary gap. So when I ask you to start an economy at a recessionary gap, this is where you start. There shouldn't be like a equilibrium on the LRAS and then the E1. No, I just want to see one equilibrium starting at the recessionary gap. For an inflationary gap, price level, real GDP, we have the long run aggregate supply to the sky, 1. Aggregate demand, 1. Our equilibrium will be to the right of the LRAS. Again, it means that our economy is overextended. We're pushing ourselves too much. Our unemployment rate is lower than the natural rate of unemployment, so it's lower than 4%. So we could be at 2%, at 1%, at 0%. We need to slow things down. This is not where we want our economy to be. Okay, it sounds like this is at full employment. That's like if you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, everything's good. That's what 7 to 8 hours of sleep is good. This one, recessionary gap, that's where you're sleeping all day. You could you need to get up and do some work. And then an inflationary gap, you are pulling all-nighters. You're gonna break the economy if you're in an inflationary gap. You need to slow things down. So let's go ahead and do some practice. We're going to start off our graphs at full employment just because that's easiest to do. So we have price level again, real GDP, the long run aggregate supply to the sky, aggregate demand to land, E1, Q1, price level 1. Y'all feel free to like fast forward wherever you need. I'm gonna give you guys some scenarios. If you want, you can pause the video and then try it out for yourself and then see if you did it correctly or not. Let's see, let's try an easy one. Let's just say that there is a decrease in consumer spending, right? Decrease in consumer spending. Remember that capital C is the correct abbreviation for consumer spending. So which one of the two does it apply to first? Is it aggregate demand or aggregate supply? And you should know that the shifters for aggregate demand is SIGEX. So C, consumer spending, is one of them. So if there is a decrease, then that means that our aggregate demand curve would shift to the left. So always draw your arrow, then draw your new curve, AD2. Label all your new points, E2, Q2, price level 2. What type of gap is this that we're now in? This is a recessionary gap. In the long run, what's going to happen? Well, price level has gone down. We know that in the long run, wages and resource prices are flexible. Our workers are going to be ridiculously understanding that price level has gone down and they're going to go ahead and accept a pay cut. Doesn't happen often in real life because, as we know, because of the ratchet effect, prices can easily go up but not down. But it does happen occasionally. So if our workers accept lower wages, then our resources are cheaper, which means that is a shifter of the short run aggregate supply, changes in resource prices. So if our workers are now cheaper, that means aggregate supply will shift to the right in the long run. And we will go, label all your points. We will go back to full employment, but at a lower price level. Okay? Makes sense? Okay, let's try another one. Let's do an increase in government spending. So we're starting at full employment once again. Price level, real GDP, long run aggregate supply to the sky, aggregate demand to the land, E1, Q1, PL1. Now this one could be QY, Q star, QFE. It's just, I like to keep them all the same so that, you know, ones all around. It makes it easier to keep track. Other than that, you might get a little messy. So we're saying an increase in government spending. Again, that's SIGEX, consumer spending, investment spending, government spending. So that's aggregate demand. So we're saying aggregate demand is going to increase because government spending increased. So we shift our aggregate demand to the right. Draw your new curve, AD2. Label all your new points, E2, Q2, PL2. So what happened to price level? It increased. So if prices have increased, our workers are going to say, hey, I can't afford my life, I need a raise. If our resources are more expensive, that means that that's going to shift aggregate supply. So you know aggregate demand shifted first, aggregate supply is going to shift next. If our resources are more expensive because they want to get paid more, then that means that aggregate supply is going to shift to the left. So we draw our arrow to the left. Draw a new curve, aggregate supply 2, short run aggregate supply. Label our new equilibrium, our new quantity, and our new price level. So we go back to full employment, but at a higher price level. So always in the long run, we're going to go back to full employment. Okay? If y'all have any questions, feel free to, send me a message. Thank you.